Hello, this is Gaiash, and these are the second and third updates in my 50 Books in 2009 series of videos. I'm sorry about being a bit late on the February updates, but, at the beginning of the month I had a cold and I misplaced a few things, including in the books, and one of them I still can't find. But I decided after a while I might as well just do both updates together, and here they are. The first book that I read in February was The House at Pooh Corner by A.A. Milne. Now, this is another of the classic Winnie the Pooh stories, and I'm going to say this was another good book. This is proof of why Winnie the Pooh was so successful. These stories are very lovely stories to read to children, and they were really good stories that I read when I was very young, and it was good reading it now. I really felt nostalgic. The next book that I read was The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. This is an alternate future for Batman. It's sort of Batman's retired. He's coming out of retirement for one last case or something like that. It's hard to explain it, but Batman's changed a bit. He's sort of wondering, this could be the end of it all. What if I did this? There's all these things. You see a couple of familiar faces. Well, one of them is a familiar face. One of them is a somewhat unfamiliar face, but a familiar character. Unfortunately, Frank Miller's other Batman books I've heard aren't so good. I believe that he is the one who wrote the infamous line, "I'm the goddamn Batman." But this one was very good. As far as Batman futures go, I still prefer the one in the DC animated universe, especially because of The Return of the Joker, which is just a fantastic movie. The next book that I read, unfortunately, I don't have. That's the book I've misplaced. It's called Tough Love, and at the moment I don't remember exactly who wrote it. I should probably put an annotation or something right here, or an image. The book itself, fail. There's not much to say about it. Okay, I'll try. It's supposed to be, this interesting love story where this girl falls in love with someone, but, it turns out that he was involved in something that happens later in the book, but it's sort of talked about in the first chapter, and you sort of learn about this, and I think it's supposed to be that you're supposed to really feel bad for her or shocked. But throughout the whole time she's dating this character, I'm thinking, this guy's clearly a criminal. Throughout the whole thing, you first meet him, he's a criminal. I don't get it. Why is this such a shock to you? Why are we supposed to feel bad? I don't understand what is so wrong with this. I sort of understand how, all the people who really despise Twilight feel when people talk about how obsessed they are with Edward Cullen, and how, the people who don't like Twilight talk about how Edward is a very abusive character. And I sort of really understand how they feel with this book, because this character, I don't understand how this relationship even began. But yeah, the back of the book really makes it sound like a better story. It says, someone is beaten half to death, and she knows, there's something wrong. Really? That was your first clue, I think now. At first that sounds, interesting. The character, I thought the character wasn't going to seem so sinister at the start, and so it was going to be a shock that this happened. No, it wasn't. Throughout the whole thing, it was so blatantly obvious this guy is likely to have done that before, was already doing that, and just because someone was suddenly shown beaten after death, he's not likeable. Well, I said there was not much to say. I said quite a lot against this book. Anyway, moving along from that, the next book that I read is another book from my childhood, The Otter in the Outhouse by Lucy Daniels. Otters have always been my favourite animals. I say always, since when I was very young. I think before otters were my favourite animals were frogs. Now they're my second favourite animals. Anyway, of course, since this book was about otters when I was young, I thought, otters, yay, I want to read this. And I have a few of the other Animal Arc books. I might read a couple of them during this as well. I don't think I ever read the others. I just had them. So I also have a lot of Redwall books I haven't read as well. I've got to read those too. But yeah, this book was a very nice and interesting story. You know, it sort of tells the story of this girl who, you know, travelled to Scotland to see a friend of hers, and they're watching a bunch of otters that sort of have. There's a family of otters in a little pool near the loch, and there's this guy who wants to create a skiing park reserve or something, and that's going to scare off the otters, and one of the otters gets left behind. That's the sort of setup to the story. It's a very nice short story to read, and as I said, otters are my favourite animals. It was made more of a nice story to read by that for me. The first book that I read in March is Nation by Terry Pratchett. Now, Terry Pratchett's books have always been very exciting. Unfortunately, I haven't read that many of them. My dad, however, I think has read pretty much all of them. He's got a very large collection of the books. In fact, I'll post a video. I'll show a clip of of his collection now. This was his newest book, and well, it's a very, very good story. It's not set in Discworld, but it's set in like an alternate version of Earth. There's this island called Nation, and I don't really want to say what the story is because I think you're supposed to be surprised of how the story goes. So, I mean, the first chapter, the way the story was, I thought, oh, looks like an interesting, and then the story changes. I think, oh, this is what the story's really about, and you know, it's really shocking. So I can't really say much about this, even though there's a lot of things I would like to say. I mean, this is a really, really good story. This next book it's the subject of a lot of hype. It recently had a movie adaptation, and if you haven't guessed what it is, it's Watchmen. Watchmen is a graphic novel written by Alan Moore. Now, Alan Moore famously doesn't really like seeing his comics made into movies, so of course there's been a lot of debate whether people like the movie adaptation, whether people think the comic's better, whether people think the movie's better, whether people like the different endings, and so I thought, well, I'm currently reading a lot of things, and this story seems interesting, so I'll pick up the comic. And so I read the comic, and it is a very, very good book. There's not much. Well, the thing is, again, this is another book where if I tell you too much about it, it's going to spoil how the story is. It's going to spoil a lot of the story. I mean, a lot of these characters, they're really complicated. You know, they have these really detailed things about their lives, and they're explained later in the book, but not so much in the comic, but in these little short bits in between the comics. Like there's these little articles talking about characters, you know, there's newspaper articles, there's interviews, there's a little thing about owls for some reason, there's little psychological detail on Rorschach, who is the most popular character in this. Rorschach is also the one character whose identity is kept a secret for a certain amount of time in this book, so even the reader doesn't know. The next book that I read is one that I definitely decided from the beginning I was going to read at some point. That book is The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. This book is just as fantastic as I remember, and there are a lot of things I forgot about the book. I'd forgotten, you know, about the whole washerman thing with Toad. That was pretty amusing to see that again. And I thought, oh yeah, I remember. Hard to reenact a surprise. The last book that I read in March is Now We Are Six by A.A. Milne. Another A.A. Milne book. So far, without fail, I have read one A.A. Milne book and one graphic novel every month. This, of course, was a very short book, so I only read it in one day. But it was the end of the month, so I thought, you know, I want to still squeeze as many books as I could. So I picked this one up and did that.